Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth webcast. I'm so excited about today's topic. It's really interesting because it's something that I don't know a ton about, so I get to sort of go on the journey of the audience as well. I'm super excited to have David Webb's own internal CAD team here, so we get to talk about technology and history and how a heritage brand sort of all comes together and can take our past and bring it into the future with new technologies. So with that, I would love to have our CAD team introduce themselves. Jean, Rumi, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm Rumi Ishino. I'm one of the CAD designer at David Webb since 2014. My background is jewelry design and metalsmithing.
I've been also working in the industry close to 19 years by now, and I have a background in the toy industry. I've worked for some really famous fabricators over the time, video games as well, and it's an honor to be working now with David Webb and making some exciting pieces.
Great, thank you so much. I've been at David Webb since 2013 too, so that's great. 7 years going strong. This is sort of a sampling of what we've got in the archive. There's these drawers that have all of our style cards, all of our, it's basically a record of every piece that's ever been produced. So they've got pictures, client information, how many times something was made. There's drawings like this great brooch that belonged to Elizabeth Taylor. It was a coral Maltese cross. And if anyone doesn't know, our Madison Avenue boutique is our flagship boutique, and here's an image of the upstairs sort of salon space that's gorgeous that we're super lucky to have. But right in the same space we have our workshop, so people could go into the boutique, they can come upstairs, see exactly where everything is made right on site. This is a wonderful historic image of David Webb himself with a foreman from 1975. We've only been in our current location on Madison Avenue since 2010, but the company has always had the workshop sort of right at its fingertips. But I want to, before we get deep into anything, I really want to sort of set up Jean and Rumi and talk about CAD, because some people may not even know what CAD stands for, what it is. So I would love to hear from you two about exactly what it is.
Sure. So what is CAD? Yes, CAD stands for computer aided design. So it's basically a software tool drawn to 2D and 3D objects. So if you take a look around the house, you can find all the objects made by CAD. It's a monitor of the screen and maybe light fixture or your shoes. It could be your earring. So It's everywhere. And I think for the jewelry industry, it's been using for 20, 30 years because of the capability of increase the productivity of design process and fabrication.
Right. It's
really popular, and a lot of software is available today, from very user-friendly one to very advanced program. But it's definitely high demand in today's jewelry industry.
I agree 100% with Rumi, and I believe that the use of CAD right now, especially with David Webb, is we have the opportunity and the capabilities to assist the jewelers in producing some fantastic pieces.
Right. Jean, can you talk a bit about sort of your background? Like, I mean, you said that you had worked in video games and toys and like industrial design as well, but how do, you think about a video game, like a totally digital world, how does that sort of transform into working with jewelry?
Yeah, I mean, it translates quite easily into jewelry, especially David Webb jewelry. There's a lot of sculptural elements that you have to refine or help evolve pieces or maintain its aesthetics. There's a lot of animals that have been made throughout the years,
right?
And you have to respect what was made, and you have to you need to have certain skill sets that you could only get from certain types of other industries that you could apply to pieces that you could only see specifically in David Webb jewelry.
Absolutely. That's sort of the perfect segue then to this slide. You mentioned animals. You know, we're so known for the David Webb Kingdom collection, and this is one of my favorite pairings of images. I think I've shown this before in other talks, but you know, they're Irving pin images from Vogue, the zebra bracelet, and then a zebra striped ring. But this is one of my favorite things that you've ever made, Jean, and it's this video that shows sort of a breakdown of the zebra bracelet itself. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, you could see that there's quite a number of pieces. We're talking over 100 pieces that is required to make just a single zebra bracelet. And the amount of construction, the screws, the linkage, it's one of the most complex things I've ever worked on in the company. And I'm proud to have got my hands on it.
I'll keep playing it. I think maybe people don't realize, but like, yes, we have a paper archive and all of our drawings and renderings and everything I mentioned, but we also have an extreme archive of things that the workshop works with, all the molds, the original molds that the pieces have always been made with, casting books, that sort of thing that like get used day to day in the workshop. So there's like an element of preservation to make sure that these molds don't deteriorate, or you know, that we can keep track of how something was made the entire time that it's been in production. The zebra bracelet's from 1963, but we still, that's probably our most popular, most iconic animal bracelet. So we make them all the time. So for you to have digitized this version of the zebra, you know, how does that let us, do you want to talk about that? Like, how does that let us, I don't know, sort of access it easier or?
Oh, I mean, being that it's digitized, you never have to worry anymore about 50 years, 100 years from now, will these models deteriorate? I don't think so.
Right.
I think digitizing them will preserve its true form, its true style, and its true aesthetic for as long as you keep these files digitized.
Right.
Yeah.
I sort of put these images from the archive here just to sort of, I feel like these are really the roadmaps for the pieces. Like you have to know exactly how it was designed originally by David Webb and his team. And I feel like this team, the CAD team and me, we're always in conversation about like,
always.
Oh, let's reference exact, you know, here's the drawing, let's look at it. Let's, you know, move more in this direction to make it more like this, or every, you know, just trying to stay true to exactly how it was always done.
Yeah. We never try to steer away from what was made. We were always looking at not just molds. We're always having also, we're always talking with the archive, which is you, and trying to compare it with the original images and trying to make sure we don't steer away from what was made.
Right. And not to mention other to improve the system and mechanism to make it like better quality of jewelry. That's a part of our role.
We've got some great examples of that later. I'm excited to get to that. These next slides, I just sort of wanted to give everyone a flavor of the workshop and what goes on in there, because there's so many master craftsmen who work with us and have worked with us for a long period of time. I mean, we'll get to someone who's been at David Webb since 1965, I think. But you know, we have, here's a great example of working from an archival rendering. Obviously that anchor is coming out of a casting that's a historic mold, but we're also constantly referencing the image and the, you know, rendering of what something should look like. These are just luscious images of gemstones being set, things on waxes.
Amazing.
You know, some gold work being done, a necklace being put together, some crescent earrings. This is Dylan, who's hand hammering some things down there in the corner, setting stones. Enamel work that's all done by hand, of course. Here's Ray, who's been with David Webb since 1965. He's a polisher. And you know, finished pieces. But that leads us to this wax section. I think Rumi had some things to talk about here.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about the comparison of traditional and modern process of jewelry fabrication, and how CAD team is actually helping the jeweler. So you can see the next slide that here is how, so once you have the rendering or image ready, you will model by carving wax. And this is a really simple egg-shaped ring. I just put it on, but people can get into really deeper side and intricate sculpting wax design I've been seeing. So one thing I want to suggest to everybody who's looking into new hobby at home, this is really a great way to start.
So just for my own clarification, like a lot of times people make waxes by hand when they're first starting, and especially in the 60s or 70s, like that.
They still do.
Doing.
They still do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But then this sort of illustrates like you go from a carved wax by hand to a silver master, and then you use the silver master to make a rubber mold, and you have the rubber mold that can finally get you to the gold.
You could real quick, you could go straight from carved wax to final casting.
Sure.
The only problem is it's going to be a one-off.
Exactly.
The only reason why you make molds is if you want to make multiples. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And you can preserve the mold later to reuse. That's why they need to make a mold.
Right. And that's so much of what we have is these like sort of rectangular shaped original molds from the 60s and 70s.
Exactly. We have mold room. It's really well maintained, but the other we are sort of replacing the old process of wax casting to new way of the CAD wax process right here.
Great.
Yeah. So it's like a comparison how we model by CAD instead of physically carving the wax. Sometimes we scan the original wax to complete the model to 3D print, and then you produce the wax model and directly cast into the final casting.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rumi. And what I wanted to add was, if you look at the bottom section of carved wax to final casting, keep in mind that when you're carving a wax, especially a giant bracelet, that could take weeks. And just to mention, like the amount of revisions from the designer, they have to recarve extensive waxes, and that could take a tremendous amount of time. The fact that we can eliminate the length of that time to a matter of days using CAD has really helped our production now, especially in this present time.
Right. Great. So this is sort of a great image to illustrate. Yeah. I think these are all zebra heads at the top there. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit what's going on with this image?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as you could tell, there's 5 heads, which equals to 5 zebra bracelets. That was, at that time I was creating, we had an order for 5 bracelets. And you could see that the entire bracelet has been laid out into the plate. Just to explain to you how fast this technology has improved, this entire build that you're looking at it only took about 12 hours.
Wow.
Now, imagine having to carve all those waxes by hand. Just one of them could take at least a month.
Wow.
Now, yeah, and if you're looking at 5 bracelets overnight, time versus, it's a huge night and day type of scale.
It's an advantage to be able to, move through the orders quickly and get everything that they're asking for at the right time. So these are printed in wax, and then those like melt away as you.
Yeah, and then these waxes are actually they can be directly casted into any metal you want.
Oh wow!
Right, into precious metal to base metal, and you can see all the 5 pieces are exactly the same piece.
Right.
So you don't need a masterpiece or anything; it's identical.
Right from the digitized file.
Right. Reverse engineering. I think this is a big component of what you guys do, if you want to jump in
Yeah,
here.
so Jean and I can sort of talk about what we do at CAD David Webb. Is we use a process called reverse engineering. What we do is you see in green, which is the original wax. And then we project the original surface into new surface.
Okay.
Then, yeah, so you might have a question about why original have one cat and the cat has a two head. It's because back into the wax carving process, you make one carving and then you duplicate into two, and you solder into one piece.
So
That's
like in the 60s, they would only make one head as the mold, and then you just make two of them.
Chop it in half and just weld it together. Yeah.
I see. I see. So then through CAD, you've been able to make it like the complete ring as the file.
Smooth, yeah, one solid piece. So that's
and you can, and just for people watching, you can sort of see here that this is 6.75. That's like our standard ring size. So having a CAD file of something allows you to like resize it whenever you want, however
Absolutely,
you want.
Yeah. Especially when you're able to digitize the actual animal into a finger size, you can literally reshape it to hug a different finger size and go from there.
That's great.
Another thing,
sorry.
go back real quick.
Yeah,
if you look at the green part of the image, that you can see the interior. It's a little bit rounded, very muddy, very. There's some areas that have been carved out. Again, please note that back in the day when they were carving waxes, the thicknesses of the walls were very inconsistent because they were just going by feel and touch. They would use mechanical hand measuring tools to figure out the thicknesses, and it was very inconsistent. The ability for us to digitize the files, we are actually able now to maintain a certain amount of thickness to keep the weight consistent, and especially keep the weight down if it needs to be lighter, to help with the weight of the gold, especially with the prices now.
Sure, just to keep everything consistent. That makes sense.
Consistent, absolutely.
Yeah. So I threw in these slides just to talk about our wood collection, because that's sort of a great example of how CAD can really help us make new things.
Amazing.
I put in the shoelace cuff here on the far side with the white enamel. That's, that design's from the 60s, made with enamel and diamonds and 18 karat gold. But in David Webb's lifetime, he never came up with a wood collection. But we thought, if we keep the same silhouette, we can make sort of a fresher take on these pieces. So these other versions, these are the Woodworks Collection, and it's basically the same silhouette, just with 18 karat gold and wood. So using a CAD file obviously would come in a lot of handy here to like be able to have the same shape, have the same size and everything.
Yeah, we didn't change anything that is from the original. We didn't change anything in terms of thickness, the width. It's all the same.
Right. It's just wood. So these are great pieces. And then we have the whole story of the fish here. So this fish is an amazing cuff. It's a repoussé cuff. We have a lot of different repoussé cuffs with different animals sort of draped on your wrist, all in gold. This is sort of a great story of how it came from, its original mold to how we work with it today. I'll let Rumi take it away.
Sure. So this koi bracelet I worked on probably 2018. And it was there was one of the client who was in love with this bracelet, but our original mold is only available in smaller size, so we have to resize it into her size. And here is again reverse engineering technique that we use. And as you can see, luckily we had the silver prototype. Silver. Yes, this piece.
Yeah.
It's mustard
in the
mold.
Box there, right?
Yeah.
That's the silver.
It was really well maintained, and I can see the detail really well. So you can go back. I was able to project all the surface into new surface, and then I can capture the original detail so well. And the other thing I want to mention is, even though CAD sounds really easy to, translate the one side to the other, maybe you can have a magical button and say, hey, make size 1, 2, 2.
Right.
But we can't really do that, not yet. And
right.
Yeah, because this is a very intricate texture and surface. So we have to work really close to the detail and make one separate to the other parts.
Right.
So if you can go back to the detail, yep.
This one, sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So right now I was working on the main body, but you have the 2 layers of fin and back fin, and it was pretty amazing to see how the original model I was making. It almost looks like fabric and
right.
Really,
I was super intrigued by this because, yes, we make all of our bracelets usually at a size 6.25. Here's the original, which is small or sort of average. And if you have the original wax here, if someone wanted to size it up, and we would have to make it a special order, it's not like you can just add a middle section to the fish. Like, you have to sort of scale everything up in an elegant way, and having a scanned perfect version of it allows you to like incrementally increase everything rather than just like adding a oblong body to the fish. It makes the design like move in a perfect way.
So our role is to keep the object, this case it's a koi fish, obviously, keep the object and then make the cuff bigger.
Right.
So preserve the original, and you cannot just scale it up. That's the no for us.
Right.
I agree with you, Rumi.
Yeah.
I agree with the not scaling it, because if you were to scale it, we have tried because we wanted to save on time and get it expedited quickly. And we've tried scaling certain pieces, rings, to accommodate just even a half a size larger. And it's really noticeably different if you hold it next to another piece that's the original size. So we have to retain certain elements and just change just the finger size of the, or the ring size or the bracelet size to maintain its original style.
Great, yeah.
Yep.
And then this sort of shows you, well, let's see. There was an image previously that had the smoothness, like once the fish, oh, here we go. Once the fish comes out of the casting, like it still has to be hand finished and hand textured.
Yeah, this is a transformation of the CAD model to the casting. And after that, you still have to have the jeweler to spend hours to make amazing texture, which is part of a great thing about David Webb. And I've been at workshop all the time and watch how they do. And it's pretty amazing. The piece I made is handed to the one of the master jeweler, Jack, who's hammering the piece one by one, and then you can hear his hammer, and just so soothing and meditating in a way. I don't know if Levi, if you ever see.
Oh, I have. It's like jewelry ASMR, like the hammering, like it's very calming.
Yeah, so I can stay like 1 hour or 2, but obviously I have to go back and do my CAD.
Absolutely.
But this is dynamic of working at David Webb.
Yeah. I think this sort of illustrated what you were talking about with the fins, like being able to, like, here you see it without the fins, but then having the fins as a separate sort of CAD file allows you to really have that detail.
I agree, guys. Like, I think that if you go back to the last picture,
sure.
Levi, the one thing I wanted to add to Rumi's comment is it's such a wonderful thing to hand off these pieces to them and to finish it. And I just wanted to point out as well that from our end, you guys might think that CAD is like a major part of the company in terms of production. We're not even close. We're probably like 10-15% of the entire process.
Right.
There's only so much we can do to produce these fantastic pieces. Like, the other 80-90% of the process is the entire workshop.
Right.
We can't hammer. We can't set the stones. We can't put the enamel. We can't polish. We can't hand engrave. Everything is done by hand through the workshop, and we are just a small part of this entire process. If you guys,
I feel like in earlier discussions we were having about this, we said something like, you know, the master drillers, they have their old historic roadmaps. They know where they're going with the finished piece, but you guys get to be the GPS to tell them like what's the easiest path, like how to make something the easiest way possible to, you know, if there are trouble spots that you can help them sort of, you know, fix things if they need to be modified or updated. So that's, it's a tool. CAD is a tool that really helps us get to where we need to be.
Not only that, not only do we guide them, is we, during the process of even them, in the middle of them putting it together, Rumi and I are always going to the jewelers and always asking them on a daily basis, what can we do to improve? What can we do? What do you see wrong? What, is there anything we did wrong? And we're always in constant communication.
Right, that's great. So this is sort of another story of like, rather than the repoussé cuff, this is all about enamel, this lion leopard cuff that comes in a few different flavors. But Jean, I know you had some great points here if you want to take it away.
I mean, as you can see, these are all scanned meshes. We do have a 3D scanning type of process in the studio. So we actually, you could see from the middle picture that the right below his nose, you could see the chewed out part of the mold.
Right here, it's a little deteriorated right there.
Everywhere. You can see there's bumps, there's missing parts, broken parts. If you were to cast this, and yes, you are able to cast it, you're not only looking at like a lot of seams, the enamel walls around the spots are very rounded. It's not going to be very easy to produce. They're going to have to edit a lot. They're going to have to add a lot of metal. But it's a nightmare, and it will take forever to actually complete. So the use of 3D scanning gives Rumi and I the blueprint to create the next steps. And you can see the next picture.
Sure.
You could see that on the left is what I was starting with in terms of fusing.
So this is the seam down the middle.
Oh yeah, it's very noticeable. It's going to take a lot of time to fix it. The enamel walls are very rounded. It's not going to be very easy. Then on the right, you could see that I was able to retain all the artistic elements that the carver from the past have developed, and I didn't change it at any point in time. All I made sure was I have the exact roadmap to create a fresh enamel surface.
Right. And sort of, so here, is this the same progression? Like here's
the exact same thing.
Here's the original seam and like the original scan with a little bit of deterioration, softer enamel walls, and then you've sort of mapped it and then you've refined it to make it like crisp and sharp.
Precisely. The middle part is basically a digitized skin where I can just project whatever original detail. And keep in mind, original means, you know, we're not changing anything. We're preserving everything that was made, even though
preservationists.
Even though it's some of these designs might say you got to make it look better. No, we try to keep everything the way it was made before, because we know people have a lot of sentimental feelings towards what it would used to be like. So we try to keep it exactly the way it was. And just make sure that just certain parts like the enamel walls are perfect for the actual workshop.
Perfect. And then here it is. So this is the crisp version. You can certainly tell these little spots are like exactly as they should be.
Exactly. The enamel walls are sharp. The spots are exactly the way it was made back in the day. The hair around the body is nice and tight.
Right.
It just sets it up for just a clean production process.
Made our jeweler really happy.
Oh, that's good. And then here's the final version, of course. So.
And keep in mind that we're always throughout the entire design process, I'm always bringing in the jewelers to my desk and asking them throughout the process, what do you think?
Right.
How do you remember this? Did I miss anything? Stuff like that. Yeah.
That's great. So that brings us to sort of another aspect of the CAD team. Megumi, who's pictured here, working with Jean. This is the element that we get to talk about all of our special commissions, which is a significant part of our business. You know, if someone has a great family stone that they want to set in a David Webb design, it's not so much, just make it fit. Like you have to know these designs that are our original, molded designs and say, okay, would their stone make sense? Can we, scale up our design so that their stone makes sense in the fit? Do you want to talk a little bit about that process of sort of special orders and how things work like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm working with Megumi Toy. She handles all of our renderings for special commissions,
Right.
production orders, and whenever we have something approved, as you can see on the image, we are constantly in communication with maintaining the artistry of what was made. Yep. Again, there are a lot of commissioned items where the client or the workshop would give us a special stone that they'd want to replace on an existing piece. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of studying we have to do in terms of, will it make sense, the construction of it. So it definitely is something that it's not just done by me alone. We are always in communication with not just the shop, but also with the render artist. Rumi, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point, Jean. And I want to add one more thing, that it's really important for me, especially when you look at the jewelry, people probably look from the front. But for me, I always look from the back side. What's the mechanism behind how it hangs, how it fits on the skin? And that's really important part as a CAD designer. How can I improve to make these jewelry to be great?
Totally. Yeah. And from an archival standpoint, like if someone comes in and says, oh, I love black enamel and I love this and that, like we're able to sort of sift through the designs that we have, present them with a few options. They're working with the sales team, of course, and then an option is chosen, waxes are pulled, goes to you guys to make sure the stone will fit or whatever element they have. It's this great like pipeline of how something moves through all the different departments at David Webb until it's a finished piece. And I just think it's a really special process for people to sort of interact with all these different stations that we have.
Absolutely.
And, as you mentioned multiple times, working with the workshop, like integrally and on a daily basis, constantly touching base with them. These are really fun images. I love them. Thank you for providing them.
Yeah, these are, almost like they are our family already, that we spend a lot of time together. And this photo I took on Valentine's Day, and Michelle and Piero.
Cute.
Obviously my favorite people.
Yeah.
We are all coming from different background, different cultural background, and different ages, but sharing their expertise or knowledge each other. It's not just from them. I'm obviously learning every day from them, but they're learning from us. What is the CAD? What is the technology? How do you use iPhone?
Yes.
I find my opportunity to work at Webb quite incredible, because it's such an honor to be working with these master jewelers. Their knowledge over the times of their time working at Webb has been what I've seen, what they can do, and how we can communicate in like such a unique chemistry is like something that is priceless. And
absolutely. I feel the same way. Whenever I go in workshop or the CAD room, I'm just like, my eyes are like blowing out of my skull to soak it all in, learn from them. It's amazing. Okay, so one last point is the question of, what if we have a drawing, which this happens often, what if we have a drawing of something that's never been executed before? So that means we have no molds. It's never seen the light of day aside from a drawing from David Webb's mind. That's exactly what happened here with the sleeve cuff, which is now a super successful bracelet version for us. Here's how it was originally designed and drawn. And then you guys were able to execute it with the cabochon, I guess they're emerald beads that are then sort of, wrapped around there in gold and diamonds. But here's a CADed version of it that with a different stone. Jean, if you want to take it away.
Absolutely. Again, this was a fantastic piece that I had a fun time working on. And one thing I wanted to point out is what was done in the past and what we've accomplished in the future or the present is you could see that some of the hinges had this tubular attachment to it. I mean,
Right
it's
here.
still used today, which is not a bad thing. But you have to think about comfort, the problems of clients wearing like a wool sweater, and these types of mechanisms catch.
Right.
They scratch your skin. There's a lot of factors that, if you're wearing a nice handbag, it could literally leave a nasty scratch on it. So those are just some of the little comments that we do hear from our office or from clients. But we, throughout the time, we've evolved and we've found ways to conceal the hinge without losing its original aesthetic, and it has become quite an improvement in our way of making the pieces.
So this right here would be the concealed version. Like here's sort of the tubular, section where the hinge would sort of swing out here. And here you can see these two little circles of right where it's sort of been melted into the form.
It works just as well. There's actually no difference in how it swings.
Right.
It's just that it's concealed and you can't tell there's a hinge there unless you move it.
Perfect.
So I don't want to be too technical, but I have to mention one thing that
Please.
so many approach of like how to make hinges hidden or not hidden, and there's always a day. I'm pretty sure all the creative people understand what I experienced, but you spend a long time trying to figure out one issue and you can't figure out. And when you go home, taking a shower or in the middle of the night, you come up with a great idea.
You figure it out.
The
I have
moment.
to text Jean saying, "Hey Jean, I think I got this." And this is one of the exciting kind of workaholic, but my joy of life.
Oh, I love that. There's a story about David Webb about, he would draw, sketch all day. He'd leave work, walk home, get halfway back to his townhouse and have to go back to the office because he had an idea to finish it.
You don't want to lose that thought. You don't want to lose that idea.
It's a tradition at David Webb.
Oh my God.
Perfect. And here's some other images just to show, like, every time we make this sleeve cuff, we make it a different way. So of course it has to be manipulated by you all to make whatever fabulous stone we're putting in it fit perfectly and sort of meshed with the design. So, here's how it was originally done with the two emeralds, and then once with a great aquamarine, once with a great peridot. It's stunning. We love that piece. And then, of course, I had to pull up some Instagram images. I know that's a great way for you guys to sort of track pieces as, pieces that you've had involvement with, and then you see them out in the world. I think, Rumi, did you have, Rumi or Jean, both of you had some involvement with bracelets over here?
Oh yeah, so the bottom of the right bracelet.
Yeah, right here.
One, this I still remember. This was the first year I walked, and it was quite challenging to try to understand what's the David Webb piece, and then it came out really good using all the CAD tool that I can think of, and I still remember the excitement once I get to that final project. And here is the Instagram photo, and people are talking about it. And this is such a rewarding moment that working hard and be a team of the David Webb.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing. The one fond moment I had was especially with this earring on the left here.
Oh yeah, the ink scroll earring, we call it.
Yeah, there's the scroll earrings. The process was actually quite fascinating to be working with the jewelers themselves. Having it like balanced right on the ear took quite a lot of back and forth between me and the jewelers. It wasn't easy per se to just design it in CAD and directly cast it. There was a lot of trial and error. So it was actually quite fascinating to have that kind of like back and forth with them. And finally we got it to work, and I'm just so happy how it turned out.
Great, we love that. So that is the end of our prepared slides, but we do have some time for a few questions if you guys are up for it.
Amazing.
We have a lot of questions coming through about what is the best CAD software for beginners.
Rumi, you want to?
Well, I think I would say we use Rhino, and which is very standard tool for jewelry industry, and it's a little bit intricate, but once you get to it, it's the most powerful tool for what we do.
Yeah, I would have to say Rhino is probably what I would consider your base program, and then you would tie in several other softwares to complement the software, because Rhino is your excellent base program, but you can't accomplish certain other complicated designs unless you start filling in other programs, especially like digital sculpting programs. You can't do that in Rhino. So.
Okay, so this sort of dovetails into that question nicely. How important is it to know the different manufacturing techniques of jewelry while designing in CAD, especially if you're a beginner and don't know much about manufacturing of jewelry? Like, do you have do you feel like you need a specific knowledge of enameling as you're making the enamel walls, or how do you sort of, know
Yeah, there's a lot of standards you need to be aware of. It's not something you could just look up online. The one thing I will always tell people that are starting out, especially if they're beginners, and if they're working with a shop or they're working for a company in, for example, 47th Street that you need to have produced, every jeweler is different. Every jeweler has different criteria of what they need. I work with specific jewelers at Webb. They have their own set standards, and they have their own criteria of what they need. If I was to work in a different company, their criteria would be completely different. So it's not really an easy thing to say, but I would highly keep in mind that whatever you're making, you have to make it specifically for that type of jeweler.
Right. And well, that just sort of highlights the importance of the conversations and the relationships that you build with
100%.
Well, especially you with the David Webb team, but as you say, anywhere you work, you have to kind of know.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another question from Francesca. Beautiful pieces, thank you, Francesca. Is every single piece made with CAD, or are there exceptions? As in, is everything made in wax first and never directly in golds?
100%. There, what I can say is not everything is made in CAD and produced. We still have molds that can successfully be casted into directly from mold. So,
and there are some things that have to be made by hand, of course, too.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, like crystal bracelets. Like I totally forgot not to say that in the earlier part of the presentation.
That's okay.
But we do have pieces like giant crystal bracelets and earrings and brooches that you can't do that in CAD. Right. And the only thing we can do to help it produce is maybe create the base for the crystal to be held in, or make a pave piece that it can be wrapped around the crystal. So there are quite a few pieces that CAD is not even closely involved in.
Yeah, great. Theodore says, can you print in precious metals rather than only wax? I actually don't know the answer to
that. Yes, but it's still in an infantile stage. I believe it's called sintering, where you could directly print gold now through some type of 3D printer. It's using like really fine powder of gold, but that's still a ways from modern standards, because it's not very, the printed metal is not as stable or strong as directly casting it. It will break. I'll be straight with it. It'll break if you were to 3D print gold right now.
Okay, I think our final question is from Pamela, and it says, would a CAD design be done in addition to or in replacement of a gouache sketch? Sometimes for high-end pieces, the gouache sketch is provided, and is the CAD design ever provided? Do people ask for that?
What's a gouache sketch?
Like the renderings, like the painted renderings, like that we have in the archive.
Yeah.
I don't think we weren't asked yet, but as per request, we are open to show the rendering of like the Zebra Bracelet you've shown earlier. And this is a part of the CAD design team can provide to have a better understanding
Right. Whenever I give tours in the archive, people do ask if we do any hand painting. And I think that, you know, per a client request, we could provide a hand painted rendering. We do also provide sort of 3D versions of the piece if someone's having a special commission made, so that they can see like, oh, how it would look on the neck or the ear or something. So there is an element to that that people can receive if they're having work done with us. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you so much, Jean and Rumi. I think that was a really fascinating talk. I learned a lot. I know I did. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. You can explore more about David Webb on our website. You can check out all of our past webcasts on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and email me if you have any questions. Thank you so much. We'll see
Guys,
you next
thank you
week.
very much.
Thank you, Levi.
Thank you, Levi. Thank
Thanks.
you, everyone.
Bye.
Be safe.
Be
Bye-bye.
safe.